Yo, I fucking love violence. Slashing, tearing, ripping, gouging, punching, kicking, shooting, killing. Shit's great. And something that most games seem to revolve around. Whether if it's a calm, collected police investigation sim or a game about mushrooms, you can be sure that the body count will bleed into the thousands. And that's... well, it's fine, but it also just kind of is what it is now, isn't it? It's something not often questioned, and when it is, it's usually with antagonistic censorshipian angles propped up by old white dudes who wouldn't know what the hell a Nintendo was if it tried to shut down their ROM sites. Or alternatively, by people trying to investigate psychological angles, which hasn't really produced much either, other than that, yeah, overexposure can lead to a temporary decrease in empathy in some people, but honestly, if anything is doing that in modern gaming culture, it's probably the toxic insularity of its communities. Suffice it to say, though, the conversation hasn't really gone anywhere, mainly because it isn't really had due to the frames in which it is that I just brought up. The well has been poisoned. Talking about it now conjures up only the conservative, God-fearing parents, dumbass teachers, ignorant politicians, and well-meaning but admittedly often preachy game journos thinking that they know you better than you do, even if they might have a point or two in there somewhere. But don't tell anyone I said that, though. Still, it is a topic that has always stuck with me, primarily due to how my mom looked at some of the games that I would play as a kid.
Mom! Watch me play video games. Also bring the Hot Pockets, you bitch.
She didn't care much for fighters or shooters, GTA or whatever the fuck is going on here. But she thought that the JRPGs were kinda neat. Pretty character designs, nice locales, beautiful music, and just a very soothing atmosphere overall. It's one of the few things that wouldn't drive her mad whenever I would play it in the living room, certainly when compared to the Game Boy, which in retrospect... yeah, I can see that not being something that you'd want to hear in the corner of your ear all day. But anyway, from time to time, she would plop down next to me and watch. Usually, I'd just show her around towns and shit, i.e. the things that I know we'd both appreciate, except for one day where I was stuck roughing in a dungeon, upon which the screen swiped into a random encounter, breaking up the nice music and forcing me to fight. She simply said, "Oh," to which I replied, "Yeah, I mean, you know, it'd be like that sometimes." Kinda secretly admitting and realizing that maybe, deep down inside, I didn't really like the common interruptions either. Now, if you've watched my channel before, you'll know that I've shared somewhat similar sentiments about not really caring for RPG battle systems on their own when talking about games like Final Fantasy 13 and 15, saying that I'm just in it for the adventure and that the rest is simply supplementary, though I've never really considered that as a strict adversity to the violence of it, but perhaps maybe it is. Analyzing what I thought I felt, at least, there's definitely something inside of me that feels that it's somewhat childish in a weird way, as if it's this part of a game that I'd like to hide to those uninitiated. Something that isn't artistic in the same way that the narratives be, which I don't know how comfortable I am in expressing that, given how it feels like an opinion birthed solely from some type of omnipresent cultural peer pressure, but I'd still say that it's often quite goofy looking and moreover, pretty fucking forced. Quite literally in the case of random encounters, as they're rarely part of the narrative and can feel quite abstract as opposed to how you engage with the world outside of battle. Some games do this better than others in that they take the random aspects out of it, but even then I still see no good reason as to why these kids walking home from school need to kill loads of animals and plants other than that I guess they were just in the way. Shit's contrived, pretty much. An easy way to just add gameplay to a scenario that was valuable story-wise, but wouldn't be interesting to play otherwise. Still, within this very genre, there sits an example of this being done well. Cloud and Aerith easily could have fought their way through the wall market, beating up thugs and crooks, kicking some Papi Chulo ass in the end, but instead, you just get to interact with the locals as you get fetch quested for a cross-dressing disguise. Only confronting the villain through a cheeky sequence that plays out differently depending on how well you were able to perk up Cloud. Shit fits, feels natural, is a nice break from what the game was leading up to it, and stands as one of the most memorable sequences of Final Fantasy VII as a result. Well, the implied gay rape probably had something to do with that too, but you know what I mean. It wasn't contrived, which I think is the bigger issue for me. not that so many JRPGs are needlessly violent, boasting battles by the minute, but that there's rarely any good longer-term justifications for them being that way. And yeah, sure, while most of these combat systems are great fun to fuck with, it still feels like a missed opportunity for more varied and interesting gameplay. I love the Yakuza games. They have amazing stories with emotions and humor and great directing and tonal shifts, effortlessly switching between dumb and legit good. They have really deep side quests too that function more like side stories that actually don't always default to smashing face. And whenever they do, it's justified, like during that one part where you get drugged by scam artist businessmen. And even then, set combat is also tons of fun, blending into the game as a whole perfectly. However, I don't think I'd stand alone here when I'd say that the fighting is hardly the main attraction. As I said, you go on all kinds of wacky adventures, whether if it's taking out a tourist chef on a pub crawl, or playing darts at a cross-dressing bar, or going baseballing to settle some ancient rivalries. It's all fun, memorable, cute, and most importantly, a really inventive and neat alternative to, as stated, not every adventure ending with you beating someone up as it easily could have done. And so, when a new game by the team behind Yakuza was announced called Judge Eyes, I was legit beyond excited. A game that wouldn't be like Yakuza, taking place in its universe but focusing on detective work, a tense character drama. It's like this could be the big dick, big cutscene, big money, big serious, big sexy, big console-based Phoenix Wright game that I've always fucking dreamed of. Except that it's also a beat-em-up still. Now, while I'm sure that the combat here will be great in its own right, I still saw this as a huge, massive disappointment. Sure, I realize that police officers and detectives can get into a scuffle here and there, so I think it's natural to expect at least some of that, but it felt pretty fucking jarring to see that exact Yakuza combat presented here regardless. Granted, the frequency of fights may be way less, which I'm definitely hoping that it is, and going by the demo, they already have loads of other interesting shit like mechanics revolving around tailing people. Fucking those things that suck ass in GTA and Ass Creed actually seem to be explored properly here, which is exactly what I wanted from this. But just something about those heat moves and crowds and all of the other crazy Yakuza combat bullshit felt incredibly, well, it needs to be here, cause it might not sell. Or perhaps more like, the player might get bored just doing detective work, never mind all of the other big successful detective series that Japan has produced. So, let's just dump the Yakuza combat in there. That'll fix it right up. And yeah, the player might get bored doing just detective work. That's a legit worry, I get that. But there's other ways to circumvent that. Chief among which, exploring all of the yet-to-be-explored gameplay angles that said detective work could produce. Like, if Papers, Please could make paperwork fun and engaging, then surely the company that once made a great game literally just about driving a car in a straight line as you listen to the car radio could do so too. And there are games that do, mind you, like Papers, Please and other adventure games. Well, to be fair, the puzzles in point and clicks are literally just as contrived, but there are examples like Hotel Dusk, Night in the Woods, or Gone Home that seek to do things differently. HD, for example, builds upon a previous game by the same developer by making conversation engaging through clever use of highlightable keywords, cool audio cues, and mundane yet quirky characters and plot points that'll stick in your brain for maximum Eureka impact. Same with Phoenix Wright, by the way. And Night in the Woods manages to make gameplay out of biking trips, casual walks, jam sessions, pickpocketing, post-teenage anxiety, and using PC simply by having its gameplay be wholly situational, as well as it adding some mild platforming to make basic movement fun to fuck with too. And Gone Home is basically just a Hazuki house from Shenmue, the game. Letting you examine and probe just about everything to learn what story do, which seems pretty fucking applicable to a Detectivo or an RPG house raid if you ask me. Similarly, on the RPG front, there's a game called Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles: The Crystal Bearers, or FFCCTCB for not at all short, that ditches combat entirely, having its gameplay also be situational, but also mostly just walking and Wiimote gimmicks. Awkward though it may be at times, it does capture perfectly the joy of those cute little moments, like, say, the prison escape sequences from Final Fantasy IX that cleverly make simple gameplay out of what otherwise would have just been cutscenes before dropping you back into the And FFCC TCB rolls that way all the way. Actually, having a boss fight that isn't a boss fight, but instead just you throwing sticks at a fucking Bahamut until it goes away or whatever. Shit's dumb, no doubt, but dumb in a way that I can't say that I've seen anywhere else, which is something that I can't say for, say, a much more playable but otherwise generic boss fights. And I guess I'm sure there's probably more games out there that do something similar. But in any case, my main thing is that over the years playing so many games, I've slowly been led to feel that combat, and per extension violence, is often just a de facto easy way out regarding making things interactive. It can be fun for sure, but it's rarely ever exciting unless it's like a straight up fighter or like Devil May Cry or whatever. But hopefully you get my point. Being that all of this was really just a front to let me nag about that thing that happens when you go to grab a chest in a JRPG when suddenly, oh god damn it, you motherfucker!